After I had made my previous video, but before I could release it, over on the workshop, Henge released the Dream remake of Aztec, using Ancient's assets. It's brilliant and is currently being hosted on some servers for you to play on, links in the video's description. This remake is exactly what you'd hope for from a remade Aztec. It's not just a lazy retexturing of the old map. It's been done properly, using the new assets to re-envision how Aztec would be done were it made today. I was amazed that it had been done to this level of quality so soon after the map Ancient had been released, so I reached out to its maker, Henge, to ask him a few questions about it. He has 2,700 hours in CSGO, but over 11,000 hours in the map editor for it, with over 200 hours invested in the last 2 weeks alone. That's dedication. Aztec isn't the first map he's remade. He's remade several maps with Nuke style like Mirage, Novice and Nash, and he's remade Mirage and Dust 1 with Dust 2's newer style. As well as this, he has also ported a few of the older maps to the game. I particularly like that he has ported Port and has updated it to try and improve its balance. So he's no stranger to remaking maps, though having just studied how difficult a remake would be, I am particularly impressed with his latest Aztec Remake, especially given how numerous and complex the assets for Ancient are to work with. He told me that when he first started remaking maps, it took him about 300 to 350 hours to finish one, but now he's familiar with the Source SDK, he's become a lot faster, saying that he's got the time down to below 250 hours. He first got into Counter-Strike in late 2014 and started mapping for it soon after. He says this made sense for him, given his gaming history. He loved building his own houses and cities in titles like The Sims and SimCity, and in numerous tycoon games. He loved using the in-game editor for these games to create environments himself and to have control over the game in some way. So these days, when he likes a game, he looks to see if there's an editor for it, and says that CSGO was perfect for this thanks to the flexibility its editing tools provided, which not only allows him to create new maps for the game, but also offers the flexibility to fine-tune and to improve upon existing ones until they're just right. For his map remakes, he chooses a room to work on, then works on getting the textures, props and lighting right in that one particular area. He then focuses on connecting it to the surrounding rooms properly via props and by correcting any issues which arise in this process. He then repeats this over and over again for every room of the map, and says he finds this approach to mapping more varied than doing each stage on a map-wide basis, all at once. He used to compile far more regularly to see how it looked in-game, but these days he is more experienced and will get about 95% of an area right on the first compile. Once the map is done, it goes through 5 or 6 more compiles as he fine-tunes details until he's happy with them, and deems the map to be finished. I asked him if he ever gets bored of the process, but he says no. There are some steps where it is rather tedious, like in piecing together prop parts into a full structure, and he finds clipping the map off after it's finished rather dull also. But overall, he enjoys mapping and says that's why it's one of his hobbies. I asked him what the most difficult bit of remaking a map was, and he says it's striking a balance between recreating a map while remaining faithful to its original design. Even this he wouldn't say is hard, describing it more as tricky, since it's ultimately down to his own choices, but says that it's getting this balance right that is the most crucial part of remaking an existing map. Compared with making a new map from scratch, he says that the only difference with remaking one is that there's a predefined layout that you must stick to, and thinks this makes remaking a map easier than creating a new one, since the theme, balance and gameplay decisions have already been made by a previous mapper. He likes to walk around the old map first to get inspiration, and to serve as a guideline for his remake. Although he likes the idea of making his own map someday, he cannot 3D model and says that until he can, he doesn't like the idea of making his own map with pre-existing assets because it wouldn't quite feel like a fully original map. He says that a new map having its own unique assets is very important to him, as it helps separate it from existing ones in look and feel. I asked him how happy he was with his remake, and he says he's generally pleased with it, but with all his remakes, says you sometimes feel limited by the originals and are unable to fully remake it the way you want to whilst also remaining faithful to the map's legacy. Imagine you wanted to remake a map in Inferno style. This map has many interiors, but the props and textures there are more suited towards confined interiors, and do not work well when applied to big halls and open spaces. He likes Nuke's textures and props because they are extremely versatile and can be used in almost any scenario. What surprised me though was that, despite its versatility and the number of times he's used that map, he considers Nuke to be one of the most difficult themes to map for. Even more difficult than Ancient's model set. He says this is because Nuke's props are all individual parts which fit together like a puzzle. He gave these images as examples of its complexity. Sure, you can construct a bendy pipe or metal scaffolding, but it takes a huge amount of time and effort to find the suitable props and to place them together appropriately. What bothers him the most is the inability to optimize maps like Valve can, because he struggles to auto-combine the models and props on the maps. He believes being able to use this feature properly would improve performance by up to 50%, but he struggles to find a clear enough guide on how to use the feature, which is why his current remakes don't use that feature. Lastly, I asked him which changes he would make to Aztec if he could. He would change the double doors between T-spawn and B-site because in their current state it's way too easy for CTs to lock it down and to prevent terrorists from using this approach to get to the site. He would also like to open up the areas either side of the bridge, and maybe to widen the bridge itself with additional cover in the form of crates and barrels, so that it's not such a savage choke point for terrorists to have to traverse. He did think about rebalancing the map, but chose to keep it faithful to the original so that fans of the map could enjoy it with a modern facelift. But if the community requests it, he will consider rebalancing it in another release. His advice to mappers out there is that tutorials are great for learning the basics or for if you get stuck somewhere, but the best way to learn to map is to load up the SDK and to start creating maps. Once he had a bit more experience, he started decompiling existing ones and said that that helped a lot to learn what creating an entire map required and which tools were needed. So thank you to Henge for taking the time not just to talk to me, but to remake Aztec. Check it out on the servers in the description below.